The nursery dome of the Cathrian warship, Talon's Edge, hummed with soft bioluminescence, casting gentle purple shadows across the reinforced walls. Lyra hadn't meant to fall asleep there. She'd only come to check on the cubs after the battle, to make sure the younglings were settled after the chaos of the skirmish with the Void Reapers. The 3 Cathrian cubs, barely a solar cycle old, had been whimpering in their containment pod, their crystalline fur dim with fear. Their parents were still in medical bay, recovering from plasma burns. Standard protocol dictated the cubs remain in isolation until their kin could retrieve them. But Lyra had never been good at following protocol when children were involved. So she'd entered the pod, sat down on the padded floor, and let the cubs crawl into her lap. They were surprisingly heavy for their size, each one about as large as a terrier, with 6 legs and faces that reminded her of a cross between a lion and an otter. Their worried chirping had gradually subsided as she hummed an old earth lullaby, running her fingers through their prismatic fur. Somewhere between the 3rd repetition of the song and the comfortable weight of the cubs piled against her chest, exhaustion had claimed her. The adrenaline from the battle, the double shift in engineering, the emotional toll of seeing crew members injured at all crashed down at once. Her eyes had drifted closed. She woke to the sound of crying, not the cubs. They were still asleep, their small bodies rising and falling with peaceful breaths, their fur now glowing softly with contentment. The crying was deeper, rougher, coming from just outside the containment pod. Lyra's eyes snapped open. Through the transparent wall of the pod, she saw Elite Guard Theic, all 7 feet of him, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides, his mandibles trembling. The Cathrian warrior, decorated veteran of 40 campaigns, commander of the ship's most elite fighting force, was weeping. His large, compound eyes were streaming with the pale blue tears of his species, and his normally rigid posture had collapsed into something broken. 2 of his hands covered his face while the other 2 clutched at his chest plate as if trying to hold himself together. Lyra carefully shifted, trying not to wake the cubs as she maneuvered toward the pod's control panel. Her hand found the release, and the door hissed open with a soft pneumatic sigh. "Theic?" she called softly. The elite guard's head snapped up, and for a moment, his training reasserted itself. He straightened, attempting to compose his features into the stoic mask he always wore. But it was too late. She'd seen him vulnerable, and they both knew it. "Human Lyra," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. His translator struggled with the overtones. "I apologize for the disturbance. I came to check on the younglings and found." He gestured at her, at the sleeping cubs, at the scene that had somehow shattered his composure. "Found what?" Lyra asked gently, fully extricating herself from the pile of cubs and stepping out of the pod. The nursery dome suddenly felt very small, with Theic's massive frame taking up so much space. The elite guard looked at her, really looked at her, and his mandibles quivered again. "You stayed with them. You went into the isolation pod. You held them." "Of course I did," Lyra said, confused by his reaction. "They were scared. Their parents are hurt. Someone needed to. No one else would have done that," Theic interrupted, his voice cracking. Fresh tears spilled down his chitinous cheeks. "Not even other Cathrians. The cubs of warriors injured in battle are left to strengthen themselves through solitude. It is our way. It has always been our way. They cry alone, so they learn strength." Lyra felt something cold settle in her stomach. That is survival," Theic countered. But there was no conviction in his words. "The galaxy is cruel. We teach our young to endure from the moment they can comprehend fear." He took a shuddering breath, all 4 hands now hanging uselessly at his sides. "I was 11 solar cycles old when I learned this lesson. My parent unit was injured in a raid. I spent 3 days in a pod like this one, alone, terrified, certain they would die and I would be abandoned. Theic, you are the first being I have ever witnessed who looked at frightened children and thought only of comfort," he continued, his words tumbling out now like a dam had broken. "Not of protocol, not of tradition. not of making them stronger. You just held them. You sang to them. You fell asleep protecting them even though you gained nothing from it, even though they are not your species. Even though you were exhausted and should have been resting yourself. The elite guard sank down to his knees, bringing himself closer to Lyra's height. Do you understand what you've done? You've shown me that everything I endured, everything I believed was necessary, it was a choice. My people chose to let their children suffer alone. We chose to call it strength when it was simply fear of appearing weak. Lyra reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and placed her hand on one of his massive forearms. His exoskeleton was warm beneath her palm. Comfort doesn't make someone weak, Theic. It gives them the strength to be brave when it matters. How can your species be so fragile? Theic whispered, his voice full of wonder and grief. Yet so impossibly strong. You have no armor, no natural weapons, no enhanced healing. You should be the weakest beings in the galaxy. Yet you face danger with songs and gentleness. You wage war when you must, but you never forget mercy. You are individually breakable, but collectively unbreakable. How? Lyra thought about it. Really thought about it. She thought about every human colony that had been established through cooperation. Every first contact that had been navigated with curiosity rather than conquest. Every human who had ever chosen kindness when cruelty would have been easier. Because we know what it's like to be scared and alone, she said finally. Every single human has felt that at some point. And most of us decided that if we ever had the power to make sure someone else didn't feel that way, even if the whole galaxy thinks we're soft for it. Theic was quiet for a long moment. Behind them, one of the cubs stirred and made a small, contented sound before settling back into sleep. I have fought beside humans for 3 solar cycles, the elite guard said at last. I have seen your warriors charge into plasma fire to rescue wounded enemies. I have watched your medics work themselves to collapse, saving lives that cannot thank them. I have witnessed your engineers give their rations to refugee children. And I told myself it was all tactical, that you gained something from these actions that I simply could not perceive. He looked up at her, his compound eyes still wet but clearing. But this was just you and 3 frightened cubs, who will never remember what you did for them. There was no tactical advantage, no witnesses to praise you, no reward. The reward, Lyra said softly, is that they got to feel safe when they were scared. That's enough. Theic rose to his feet slowly, all 4 hands coming together in the Cathrian gesture of profound respect. The Galactic Council fears humanity because you breed quickly, adapt faster, and refuse to stop expanding. They fear your weapons, your strategies, your unpredictability in combat. He paused, looking back at the sleeping cubs in the pod, their fur glowing softly in the darkness. But I think the real reason the galaxy fears you, Theic continued, his voice steady now, is because eventually, inevitably, you will teach the rest of us to be better than we are. You will show us what we've done to ourselves in the name of strength. And we will have to choose whether to remain as we were or to become something we never imagined we could be. Lyra smiled. Is that such a frightening thought? The elite guard looked at her. This small, fragile human who had accidentally started a revolution in his heart simply by holding frightened children, and he felt something crack open inside his chest. Something that had been sealed shut since he was 11 cycles old and crying alone in a pod, just like this one. Yes, Theic admitted. And also, no, not anymore. In the nursery dome of the Talon's Edge, as the ship hurtled through the darkness between stars, an elite guard and a human stood together in comfortable silence, watching 3 cubs sleep peacefully for the first time in their short lives. And in that moment, the galaxy changed, just a little bit, the way it always did when humans were involved.